Welcome everyone, my name is Tom Curley, an independent Italian video game developer, and I am working on Memento Vivi, a 2D action platformer with card-based combat. Before I start talking about my game, I wanted to thank you all for the support my first devlog video has received. It truly means a lot to me. Thank you. Another thing. Sorry if I sound weird, that's simply because I've been feeling under the weather. I'm a little sick, but don't worry, I've been very slowly getting better. So, in my latest video, this channel's introduction, I talk about the very basics of my game, Memento Vivi, and this devlog series. Today, I want to go more in depth by talking about Memento Vivi's gameplay and its latest developments. Once again, the game is still early in development and things are bound to change. The two main elements of Memento Vivi's gameplay are platforming, movement, exploration, dodging attacks in combat, and cards, abilities, keys, passive equipment, and choosing attack cards in battle. Let's explore the platforming aspect first. I want the knight's moveset to be fun, in-depth, and customizable. There's the basic left and right movement, there's jumping, crouching, sliding, and spinning. Outside of the basic moveset, with abilities that need to be unlocked, there's also dashing and double jumping. There are also some advanced techniques already in the game that chain different mechanics in interesting ways. Both spinning and dashing give invincibility frames to dodge enemy attacks and obstacles. There are also some facilitators to movement and game feel, like ledge grabbing, coyote time, and jump buffering. At the moment, platforming is the most complex part of the game in the coding department, but I'm happy to say that it seems to be intuitive and easy to learn for playtesters. Cards, on the other hand, represent many different aspects of the game. Ability cards give the knight new abilities, at the moment dashing and double jumping, and in the future wall running and other interesting mechanics. Let me know if you have any game references I could check out. Key cards function as keys for exploration, equipment cards can passively change the knight's values like movement speed and health amount, and last, but definitely not least, there are combat cards that function as your moves in combat, attacks, buffs, repositioning, and more. Both equipment cards and combat cards can be customized by the player to create a preferred deck and build. Player freedom is a very important aspect of Memento Vivi. Now, it's time to dive into combat, the state in which every aspect of the game comes together to create a truly unique experience, platforming and deck building, action with strategy. Combat is divided in two phases. The first one is the attack phase, or player phase, in which the player uses cards to reposition, damage the enemy, heal, create platforms, etc. During the attack phase, the player has a limited amount of energy, a resource needed to play cards, and time. Both can be slightly modified by cards or special enemy attacks. Then there's the defense phase or enemy phase, in which every enemy present will attack with different bullet patterns that the knight will need to dodge. Enemy attacks will adapt and select different bullet patterns based on the presence of other enemies. So, this is Memento Vivi in its current state. What do you think? I hope you like it. Time to talk about my recent progress then. There's a lot, but I'll focus on the most important things. First things first. The spin mechanic, as important as it is a very recent addition. Before the spin, there was an exploration attack mechanic that could surprise enemies that hadn't yet spotted the knight, and also slow down projectiles. It was neat in concept but very weak in execution, so I decided to scrap it. This new spin mechanic is a much more dynamic and important part of platforming. When used, it gives a little initial boost of verticality, in which the knight is invincible, and if its input is held down, it slows down descent significantly. It can interrupt other actions like dashing and double jumping to prevent player errors, but there's also a last, very important part of the mechanic: recharging already used dashes or double jumps. If the player inputs a consumed mechanic, a dash or double jump, that can normally only be used once in the air before returning to the ground, right after the spin, it will recharge it, making airborne movement expressive and dynamic. Only one spin combo, as I like to call it, is possible in the air before returning to the ground, but when wall jumping is added, this moveset will make it possible to have crazy platforming challenges and enemy attack patterns. Another very important aspect of the game that wasn't working since this week is equipment. I took various workdays just to rewrite from scratch a lot of unoptimized code, and now both decks, combat and equipment, are working correctly. Equipment cards can change passive values and add special favorable rules during battle. In the former case, I'm talking about stuff like movement speed, health, and energy amount. And in the latter one, there are cards that can add an extra energy on low health, or add a new temporary card when no attack cards are drawn. I want equipment cards to be rare and valuable findings during the night's adventure, more important than regular combat cards. Oh, and another thing, I want every single card to be unique, with no repetition. We'll see how that goes. Lastly, I added an intro section to the current demo level, taking into consideration the newly added spin mechanic. I've also added some lights and fixed time-up tearing, creating a way better impact of the game's setting. I had 2 new playtest sessions that went pretty smoothly, and other things that I'll probably talk about in the next devlog, like trying to compose music. My next main goals are to implement NPC dialogue, learn how to make shaders to give a distinct look to the game, one inspired by games like Before Your Eyes, at least one music track, and most importantly of all, action-based enemies that attack you with melee attacks and not projectiles. Thank you for listening, and see you in my next video.